Aaron Pico is one win away from a UFC title shot without ever having to step foot in the octagon.
I don't want a participation trophy for the UFC. I want a belt.
Before the UFC, even before making his MMA debut, Pico was once the most hyped prospect ever.
Aaron Pico, who has been heralded as the greatest prospect in MMA history.
A wrestling phenom, a boxing standout, he had all the tools to take over the sport.
Pico beginning to shot.
But just as quickly as the hype grew, it vanished after two devastating losses.
Pico hits hard.
Now though, Aaron Pico is back. He's fulfilling his destiny, finally making the move to the UFC, and is on the verge of becoming champion. But not for the first time in his career, he's being thrown in the deep end. The difference is this time, he has the experience to handle it. So this is the story of how Aaron Pico is one fight away from a UFC title shot. Before setting his eyes on MMA, before even being born, Aaron Pico was already destined for greatness. He came from the notorious Pico family of California. Since the 1700s, the ancestors have served many important positions in California, things like war generals, state senators, local mayors, and much more. But for Aaron, it wasn't politics, but quite the opposite. Combat sports. He began wrestling at 4, boxing at 10, and competed in pancration tournaments. It's safe to say he was elite at all of them.
You are a legit prodigy, and you don't hear about people like you with your background. Most people we hear about, like, okay, they just did wrestling and then they're going to transition. I mean, you were really doing it all as a very young kid. What is, like 11-year-old, 12-year-old Aaron Pico like? Like your friends are going to birthday parties and playing like in like rec league soccer, and you're traveling the world competing in these competitions. Did you have any friends? Did you even go to school?
Pico won national junior Golden Gloves titles, national pancration titles, and numerous state titles. He's just one of those guys where whatever he does, he's one of the very best in the world.
If you ask me what does a perfect athlete need to do, what do I want my son, if he goes into the sport, what do I want him to do? My dream. You're going to fall short of your dreams, but if I had a dream and I laid it out for guys, I would tell you right now it would be Aaron Pico. I want my son to treat people. I want him to act like. I want him to carry himself. I want him to dress like. I want him to train like. I want him to be disciplined like. I want him to eat like Aaron Pico.
But there was one sport that stole his heart: wrestling.
So I was a freshman in high school. I went undefeated, and then after that, I just did online school and started traveling the world wrestling for the U.S. So.
Okay, yeah, so see, that's how much, so Aaron was able to do all that, going to international tournaments, beating some of the best guys in the world as a high school kid.
He won the Under-17 World Freestyle Championship, but unlike most North American wrestlers, Pico didn't go the traditional college route. Instead, Pico signed a bunch of endorsement deals, one with Nike that made him a professional athlete, unable to compete at a collegiate level. But he wasn't concerned with winning NCAA titles. He'd already won on the world stage and was looking to take that one step further with his Olympics aspirations. And in terms of MMA, most wrestlers transition as an afterthought when their career is over, yet even as a teenager, Pico already had his eyes on fighting. That was his aim: make the Olympic team, win gold, then transition to MMA. But it wasn't to be. Pico made the US Olympic team trials for 2016, but narrowly lost in the final against a formidable opponent who went on to wrestle for the bronze medal in Rio.
I was down 4-0 going into the final match. It's best out of 3. I beat him the first one, he beat me the second, and then the third one, I was down 4-0. And then I came and I tied up the score 4-4, but since he had a bigger move, he won. And to me, that still bugs me. Like, you do all this work and then you be like a basketball game, like maybe I'll mess it up, but like it being tied 100 and 100, but whoever had more three-pointers wins. It's like, no, you should go to overtime.
Pico could have continued his wrestling journey and would have likely been the favorite to make the 2020 Olympic team, but his mind was elsewhere. So that ended up being Aaron Pico's final time competing in a wrestling singlet. Now his full focus was on conquering the MMA world. And with his wrestling pedigree and boxing experience, Pico was one of the hottest unsigned prospects in the sport. Every promotion would have had their eye on him, but before things like the Contender Series, the UFC were often reluctant to sign debuting or super inexperienced fighters like this. So instead, Pico ended up with their biggest competitor at the time, Bellator, and it was a rocky ride. Outside of perhaps Brock Lesnar, Pico was quite literally one of the most hyped debutants in all of MMA, and that debut went worse than anyone could have imagined. Choked out in just 24 seconds.
That was like the most embarrassing day of my life, June 24th, but dang, if there were no bad moments, you wouldn't appreciate the good moments.
MMA is an unforgiving sport. It doesn't care about your history, wrestling credentials, or national titles, and Aaron Pico learned that the hard way. From then onwards, he accomplished what we all thought he would. 4 fights in a single year, 4 first-round finishes.
Blocked. Pico beginning to Mamma mia! What a left hook! Pico!
And the wild thing, he wasn't even using his wrestling, he was KOing people clean.
When you're in control and you're having a sport and the best thing to do is to knock somebody out, it's like the best feeling in the world. It's like a sweet spot that just puts them down, and said I'm addicted to it. It's like hitting a home run.
At this point, Pico's brand was through the roof, but yet again, it came crashing down, this time far, far worse.
Oh my goodness! That's it! It is all over! And Henry Corrales!
Back-to-back devastating losses, one with a brutal knockout, the other a flying knee much like Yoel Romero did to Chris Weidman. The hype train was truly over, and it looked like Aaron Pico just couldn't cut it at the top level of MMA. And bear in mind, this was Bellator, and not even the very, very best of their featherweight division. From this point onwards, the MMA community kind of moved on from Pico and his story. He wasn't really utilizing his wrestling, and in their eyes, he just wasn't that guy we all believed him to be.
He could have taken him down. Who's going to stop Aaron Pico from taking him down?
He could have Khabib'd him.
He could have Khabib'd him. Here's the thing.
Why not do that early?
But here's the thing. You can do all things.
No.
You can do all things. But if you're standing in front of a guy all the time, if you get that guy hurt the way he got that guy hurt, if you're objective, okay, it's easy to be Monday morning quarterback, right? But objective, looking at it right now, I would say, take him down.
Yes.
He's hurt.
Yes.
Take him down, smash him up, and choke him. And then you take no damage.
But Aaron Pico had one thing in abundance: time. Because he'd been around a while already. People forgot. He was just 22 years old with 7 Bellator fights under his belt.
He was thrown out to the Sharks a little too early.
Yeah.
And if he doesn't get back on that horse, you know that this game is unforgiving, because it's not wrestling. You know, wrestling is there's grappling. You get rolled up and you get tagged. In this game, there's so many knees, elbows, so many different ways of getting finished.
We were watching him learn on the job. Pico himself even admitted he was just raw talent and that he didn't truly know how to fight. And that realization led him to hit the reset button on his career. Pico then started training at Jackson Wink, gained a true head coach, and it started paying dividends. Because without as many eyes on him as before, Pico began to flourish under his new training regime.
It does feel like the last few fights you've had, everyone's going, aha. See, that's the Aaron Pico that I knew was there. That's the one I've been looking for. Here he is arriving. Feeling that way?
Yeah, Luke, I mean, I feel really good. This 2020 year was a great year for us, for my team. And like anything else, I always say, for me in the beginning, it was the speed in the cage that I was having a hard time adjusting to. Things were coming at me so fast.
Since those 2 losses, Pico has had 10 more fights with Bellator. Outside of a freak shoulder injury, he's been victorious in every single one.
And Pico looking very... Oh, it's over. It is all over. Just like that. The power of Aaron Pico on display here.
It put him most likely next in line or very, very close to a Bellator title shot. But with Bellator being bought out by PFL being a total mess that we won't get into, Aaron Pico hasn't fought in over a year, which by his standards is a huge layoff. But that uncertainty ended up being a blessing in disguise.
It is my absolute privilege to bring out a very special guest. One of the hottest free agents in mixed martial arts is bringing his act to the big show in the UFC. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome decorated wrestler, former Bellator fighter, now in the UFC where he belongs, Aaron Pico.
All of a sudden, Aaron Pico wasn't hunting the Bellator strap, but instead the UFC's 145-pound title. And the UFC clearly thinks highly of him because they've thrown him in the deep end of the division, where just one win will all but guarantee a title shot. Instead of potentially easing him into the UFC, they've given him perhaps the toughest fight outside of the champion, Movsar Evloev.
To get Movsar right out the bat, or just have that name, I think the UFC knows I'm exciting and I'm capable of becoming a UFC champion, so I gotta be ready.
Movsar is 19-0, brings unrelenting pressure, and in many people's opinions should be fighting for the title already.
Pretty clear that it wasn't going to be Movsar.
because that's who I thought, you know, would be. Like, you know, obviously him being undefeated and on the sort of a tear that he's on. But I think they've matched him up. You've seen him tweet something about that, so he's already went out and made that public that he's obviously unfortunate he can't fight for the title.
But stylistically, it's not the worst matchup in the world for Pico. Movsar is an elite wrestler. He outgrappled Aljamain Sterling, his cousin in Olympic gold medalist, and his middle name is Magomedovich. On the ground is clearly where he shines. It goes without saying that Pico has a really solid shot at neutralizing the grappling altogether and keeping this fight on the feet.
Can put you in a position where you're potentially beat him. And stylistically, that's a great ass matchup for you.
No,
I think you finish him. I think you finish him in one. You go to the body, your hands are freaking lethal. And his grappling just doesn't make sense.
If he's able to hand Movsar his first ever loss, Pico is all but guaranteed a title shot in his second ever fight. That's only happened a handful of times in UFC history, and when it has, it's been the top of the top from other organizations, the likes of Anderson Silva, Rampage Jackson, and Michael Chandler.
I have my work cut out for me. Like, let's just, you know, it's all great to have this media and everybody's excited, but at the end of the day, you got to go in there and knock people's heads off, you know, so that's what I'm here to do.
But this might be the perfect time for him to enter the UFC's featherweight division for so many reasons. Firstly, both Ilia Topuria and Max Holloway are moving up to lightweight, seemingly for good. That's two extremely difficult fights for anyone out of the way. Volkanovski is approaching his late 30s and is very much hitting his twilight years, and the majority of people looking to take their place as strikers. Yair Rodriguez, Diego Lopez, John Silva, all of whom Pico should have a significant wrestling advantage over.
These guys are going to be some serious problems for the division. There's nobody that can just go in there and act like Aaron Pico is not a threat. I mean, have you seen the dude fight?
Cara, problema, né?
He's a problem. Aaron Pico's a problem.
Much like his MMA debut itself, Pico is not taking the easier route. But this time, he has so much more experience, is in his physical prime, and is poised to take over the UFC. It isn't going to be easy, but Aaron Pico is the kind of athlete that steps up to the plate when the lights are brightest. And if he does, he could not only be the next 145-pound champion, but the next big star the UFC are so desperately searching for. Thanks for checking out the video. If you're still here, please do us a quick favor and go hit subscribe. The majority of our viewers aren't subbed to the channel, and we'd love to change that. So thanks for watching, and we'll catch you on the next video.